Hey guys, I just wanted to showcase to you guys a worm tech that I've been trying. With the re-exploration of Tengu plant, I decided to take a spin on worms. Worms is one of those decks that is rumored to be a very good deck, a control deck. If you are able to resolve W Meteorite. That is a trap card in combination with Worms X. If you're able to send the Jagen and special summon the Jagen, and then set the Nebula, what you have is what we call a combo card, two-card combo where you're able to basically generate tons of value by drawing, but also being able to establish a board control, a big monster on the board, such as Worm King, and then being able to control your opponent in the control game and being able to win. However, although that two-card combo is very powerful, needing to see the Worm Zex as well as the Nebula, it is often not going to be seen with each other, unless of course that you're very lucky. But oftentimes you're not going to be able to see the two cards in combination with each other. So what I decided to do is take a card that people don't play very often. It's been a card that's been seen even in GOAT format. So the card I'm referring to is called Cat of Ill Omen. So if you guys don't know what this card does, it's a flip effect monster that is able to search for a specific trap in your deck, any trap. So it can be a continuous trap, normal trap, or a counter trap. And I combine this theory because this card allows me to see Nebula Meteorite. You're going to need to see that card if you want to resolve that card consistently. So I added basically 3 more copies of that trap card in my deck. But however, if I already resolve Nebula Meteorite and I want to search for a different trap, I'm allowed to search for that trap directly to my hand. However, in order for me to see the trap, for this card to search the trap directly to my hand, I need to have Necrovalley on the field. So I decided to play the Necrovalley field spell. This card actually overperformed in Worms because in theory in games 2 and 3, people are going to side deck Decrow and Debunk to be able to interrupt your Zex play, where your Zex special summons the Jagen to the field. And in the event that that happens, what you can do is activate the Necrovalley first, and then summon the Worm Zex to send the Worm Jagen. And then now that the Jagen's in the graveyard, is now vulnerable to cards like DD Crow and Debunk. And so having a Necrovalley out there protects the Jagen from being banished. Also, a lot of the meta decks in Tengu plant format likes to use the graveyard quite frequently, actually. So being able to shut off cards that utilize the graveyard and try to move cards out of the graveyard, Tengu Plant being one of them, being able to special summon a Spore by banishing a plant monster to copy the level is a big play that Tengu Plant often does. If you play against agents, they like to banish the Venus from the graveyard or the Agent of Earth to special summon the Hyperion. And on top of that, it stops the Hyperion that's currently on the board from popping the Necrovalley. So against agents, this is a really good card as well. But I'm not going to go too much in depth as to why Necrovalley is good. We all know why Gravekeeper has a spot in the meta game for Tengu. But we're going to go back to Cat of Ill Omen here. So if you don't have Necrovalley, because you just didn't draw well, and you just have the cat still allows you to put the trap card that you want on top of your deck. So even though you're not getting a +1 out of the Cat of Ill Omen, the +1 is latent, because when you do resolve the Nebula Meteorite, then what happens is you're going to be able to generate +1s, +2s, because the Nebula replaces itself by resetting the Jagen. But if you're flipping the Jagen off the Nebula, you get a +1 if you're able to bounce back a Synchro monster or any extra deck monster back to the extra deck. And the other +1 comes from being able to draw a card for every worm that you bring, that every light reptile monster you set. So even though you're not generating a +1 because it gets attacked over, and then you do get a -1 because they get destroyed and it goes back on top. When you're able to flip the Nebula, you get the +1 from getting the Worm King. So ideally, in the mass scheme of things, this becomes a Worm King if you're able to put a Nebula on top of your deck. Now, if you do have the Necrovalley, this is actually a neutral when it gets attacked over and destroyed, and you add the trap to your hand. That's the mass scheme of it. It can either be a +1, a neutral, or a -1, depending on the situation. But the -1 is not so bad because when you're getting a utility card to your hand, by adding the Nebula to your hand, and then you actually resolve that trap card, then what happens is the cat becomes the Worm King, because the card that you draw replaces the Nebula, and then the +1 happens from flipping the Jagen. So the cool thing about Nebula is because you're able to flip all face down monsters face up. So even if you have cards that don't have flip effects that aren't worms, you can still proc their abilities. So we'll go more into that a little later. But yeah, definitely consider playing Cat of Ill Omen in worms, because you want to see your combo right. And then if you can resolve your worm combo where you have Worms X and as well as the Nebula, then you have a higher chance of winning that game, because being able to generate so much pluses, but also putting a big body on board that can destroy any card by tripping a worm is a very key aspect of this deck. So, to pair off with playing the Necrovalley, I decided to play the Commandant as well, just to be able to search the Necrovalley out of my deck, but also being able to be a monster that doesn't rely on Necrovalley to be on the field to do damage. So, I know a lot of different monsters that rely on field spells, that if it's not on the field anymore, they destroy themselves. Commandant is one of those monsters that don't rely on the field spell being there. Otherwise, it would be auto destruct. So popular examples of this is like Skyscraper and Captain Gold, being 2100 monsters. But once the field spell is gone, then they get destroyed because the field spell is not there. Another card is called Zeradius, I think, where if the field spell Sanctuary of the Sky is not on the field anymore, then it auto destructs. But this card doesn't do that. The reason why I play this over Terraforming is that it's a monster that could do damage. Whereas if you just have Terraforming, it's not a monster that can do damage. And since you play such a low monster count in this deck, sometimes it's really wise for you to have this guy with Necrovalley and set it so that it walks under Bottomless and Warning, so that if they do attack it with a Tengu, for example, and it flips face up, the Necrovalley, along with the 2000 defense, amplified by the field spell, allows you to bypass the Warning in the Bottomless. So in the event that you don't have it, a monster, this acts as a form of like mini defense. Okay, and then to pair with the Necrovalley, I decided to play the Royal Tribute. So Royal Tribute is a very powerful card in Tengu. However, because stun is an archetype in the meta, stun decks often play very low monster counts. But even if this hits a 1-for-1 with a stun monster, you're still buying a lot of time against the stun matchup, because it discards all of the stun cards out of their hand. So I'm not sure what stun monsters people play in Tengu other than Fossil Dyna and Banisher of the Radiance. But if you're able to hit those cards in theory, it's supposed to buy them a lot of time. But if you're able to resolve a Royal Tribute, all their stun monster gets discarded from their hand, and you're actually in a better position having resolved Royal Tribute than not. So yeah, so I am playing Worms, and this is the package I decided to play with. It's really good in theory because it protects your Jagen, to recap, and it also allows you to have meta. It's still a meta. Necrovalley is a meta card, a meta call card, to be able to lock out your all the meta decks in the current format. So, definitely decide if you guys do decide to take Worms. Try this little engine out. I think it's really good in theory. So to pair off with the combo cards that I was talking about, you're going to need to play Kartros in your deck. The reason why you want to play Kartros is because he's basically your fourth Jagen. So if you don't see... the reason why I play Worm Kartros is because it allows you to search for Worms X. And if you have Worms X, like I said before, if you have Worms X along with... So let's say you open up these two cards here. These two cards allow you to search for your combo pieces. However, the downside is that you have to wait a couple turns for that to happen. So if you have both of them in your hand and not Nebula or Zex, then you're playing the slow game where until you find a way to resolve Worm Zex. But if you do have one of the combo pieces, like let's say you have this, this could be a wild card for Worm Nebula, right? And you have the Worm Zex, then over the course of 2 turns, you're going to have the combo of this and Nebula, right? So that's kind of the idea why I play the Worm Kartros. If I have the Worm Kartros and I have the Nebula, right, then this is basically a standard Worm list where if I resolve the Kartros, then I can get the Worm Zex, and the Worm Zex can dump the Jagen, and I can set the Jagen and set the Nebula on my second turn. So that's why I play the one Kartros. I decided to play only one copy because I don't want to have too many flip effect monsters. Although card trust it is a +1, by flipping it and then adding a worm. I understand that the game is not slow enough for you to be able to resolve 2 flip effects, especially against combo decks, and that's a problem about the all formats that you play in Yu-Gi-Oh, because ideally as the format gets more and more solved, it gets more and more faster, and so being able to resolve 2 flip effects is actually really hard to do in a fast-paced Yu-Gi-Oh game. So, and so in the early stages of the game, you want to be able to build deck builds so where you don't have to resolve a flip effect so that you can play the game, or 2 flip effects to play the game. You want to only resolve 1 flip effect to play the game. And so, if you're able to resolve one of this, and then finally summon the Worms X to the Jagen, then you've only had to resolve 1 flip effect to play the game. That's kind of my theory process behind why I only play 1 Kartros. Because if I see it, then it's a 4th copy of Zex. And this is pretty standard. So the Worms X and the Jagen, there's not much to say about it. You need these cards in order to play Worms competitively. For the stun package, I only play 1 Falso Dyna because it's a card that I want to see if my board is already established. And if I don't have an established board, Falso Dyna is actually a very underwhelming card if you don't have a way to deal with the current boards on the field. So if you compare Falso Dyna for like a back row, for example, then it's okay. But Falso Dyna is not going to win you the game by itself. You need other cards alongside Falso Dyna to win the game, if that makes any sense. And a cool combo that if people don't know is that you can actually flip this card with Worm Nebula and protect it. So if your opponent has a bunch of special summon board and you flip over W Nebula, right? Then this card flips and it destroys all special summon monsters on your opponent's side. And then on top of that, if they have cards that allow them to push, such as BLS, or Call the Haunted, or Monster Reborn, or all these other different cards that make people special summon to push, Falso Dyna locks that out, and so they wouldn't be able to push further. So it's basically kind of like a turn-ending combo. Granted, you won't be able to resolve the Nebula right to special summon the Worm King, but this is often enough for you to short to the attack position and then force out a back row. And then if they try to banish this guy because they want to play the game, then you can just normal summon a Worms X and then dump the Jagen. That's kind of the idea behind Falso Dyna with the Nebula right combo. But yeah. And then, of course, I played the One Honest because it's the legal copy where you can compare this with the Worms being a light monster. It's really good in this format because damage step tricks are very scarce. So you're going to need to rely on Forbidden Lance, Horn of the Phantom Beast, and all the other damage step traps. Where if you have the Honest, then you win most of the time. You win all of the battle tricks, the damage step tricks with playing the Honest. That's why I play it. Being a 1900 defense monster allows you to stall as well in certain matchups such as Hero Beat in the event that you don't open up a worm. And then, of course, you have to play the dualities because you are playing a stun deck, so you definitely need to play duality if you want to do well with the stun deck or a control deck. One MST, I don't like main decking too many MSTs in the control deck because you don't know what you're going to play against. So I do side the 2 MSTs in the side deck in case I want to play, have more cards against the stun matchup, so I can hit MST. I can hit like stun back rows. 1 Book of Moon. This card is okay. It's good for disruption, especially against the Synchro decks where they try to Synchro summon into like Black Rose, for example. But I found that this card is okay because even though you can set like your Cat of Ill Omen and being able to flip it again to generate a +1, that combo is only okay. In the future, I'd probably cut this card for like a Mirror Force, just because Mirror Force is just better all around. Being able to clear all your monsters, your opponent's monsters, is really cool. So maybe in the future I'll cut the Book of Moon for that reason. I'm sure there's other reasons why Book of Moon's good too, because since you're playing the control matchup, the control deck, people are going to be side decking Roll of Decree against you. So I can see why the Book of Moon is still a very good utility card to be able to interrupt under a Book of Moon. But Book of Moon doesn't get rid of the monster is my biggest issue. Although it does have a lot of utility, and it is at 1 in this format. So I'll think about what card I can cut instead of Book of Moon for Mirror Force. But I don't play Mirror Force in this deck, nor do I play Torrential. To play the anti heavy storm package, I decided to play the Starlight Row with the Solemn Judgment, just because you're a back row deck and you want to be able to protect your back row, and then also having special summoning a Stardust is really useful because once you're able to special summon a Stardust, then you have another form of anti heavy storm card. So I decided to play that, and then of course I'm playing the Nebula, the 3 Nebula. Right, because you need this card in order to capitalize on +1s, especially since you're playing the stun matchup. So this is your payoff card, and then I play the 1 Worm King to special summon off the Nebula. So in some situations, Worm King can be actually a really good card to draw if you don't see your Nebula, because what you can do with Worm King, you can tribute summon one Worm to bring this guy out. So he actually applies pressure even though you draw him in your opening hand. So I want to be able to play only 1 copy, because even if you do draw him, it's not too bad because you can still activate this card even though this card is in your hand, and you can still generate tons of advantages by resolving this card, depending on how many worms you can set with this card. So I don't agree you should play more than 1 copy of Worm King, even though theoretically, even if you open up one, you never want to open one up if you don't have a worm in your hand. So because you play such a low monster count, it's very unlikely that you'll be able to resolve tribute summon for this, but you can tribute summon for this if you have a pretty dominant worm board. So that's why I can agree by playing only 1 copy of it, so you can resolve this card. And then of course we play the Warning, the 2 Bottomless, and the 3 Deep Prisons, I'm sorry, for the hero matchups, so that they don't resolve their Miracle Fusion against you. And then the 1 Compulse. So the Compulsory is a really good card against the Synchro boards, the XT's board, whatever it is. So being able to bounce back a Shining and not let the Shining resolve its effect to reoccur their Stratos is kind of the idea behind Compulsory. It's also good against set monsters if you want to go for lethal, where you can just summon another monster, compulse a set monster, and just attack for game. Especially since Dandelion is still in this format. Some people like to set Dandelion in order to stall against the Warns because it is a control deck. So you can just flip the Compulsory, summon a monster, and attack directly, and you have the game. So that's my deck list for Worms for main deck. If you guys want to go into my side deck options, you could. The idea behind the side deck is, since my traps are searchable, you can just side deck 1 of trap cards, so you don't have to hard see it. I side the 1 Imprisoning Mirror so that I could stop tour guides from activating their effect. Another reason why I side this is against Gravekeepers, so they don't use Descendant or Spy to pop stuff, or use Assailant to switch my monsters to defense mode. So since I only side 1 because it is searchable by the Cat of Ill Omen. I know it does conflict with Cat of Ill Omen because this cat is a dark type, but ideally you're going to see more copies of this, and so you can see this card in your by searching for it if you already have the Nebula combo. One on Black Horn of Heaven, because it's just a really good card in general, especially being able to 1 card negate a whole Synchro Summon or an Xyz monster is kind of the key, or an inherent monster such as Master Hyperion, BLS, blah blah blah. A card I tried to do was Grave of the Super Ancient Organism, but it's a card that stops Worm King from being able to activate its effect. So in the future, I'll probably just cut this card completely. But it is good in theory because you can stop Hyperion and BLS from using their effect. And also Chaos Sorcerer it also stops him from attacking too. So maybe in the future I'll cut that card. I cited a Rivalry and Gozen Match. So the rulings behind Gozen Match and Rivalry have been rectified in this format. So you can tribute summon your own. You can't tribute summon your only monster for a different type for Rivalry and Gozen because it's been rectified since Edison. So just an FYI for you guys who don't know. But these cards can be searched with Cat of Ill Omen, and I only side 1 of each because I don't know what matchups Rivalry will be good against or Gozen Match will be better against than Rivalry. And then the spells, I think that's all my traps. No, I do side deck Trap Dust Sheet because I don't want to have that against Hero Beat. It's a really poor card to have. With the stun matchups, there's also GKs, there's also TG stun. So they're going to be setting a lot of back rows, and I just don't agree you should main deck it. Of course, this is always going to be a point of contention for a lot of people that they go by probability theory, where if you do see it, then you have an 80% chance of winning the game or something like that. But I say that if you draw into it, past the turn 1, then you have a less than 80% chance of winning because now you have drawn a card that you can't resolve against stun matchups. Although it is a very good win button against agents or even Tengu Plant because you're able to see their hand and then put back a key component card. The one Iron Wall is searchable, and we already know how great Iron Wall is in this format, being able to stop Chaos monsters from being able to spell them. So I side this mainly for Chaos. And then I tried to side deck this Close Forest because earlier I forgot that I decided to play the Terraforming, and then when I found 3 copies of this, I decided to cut the Terraforming for this. But if you do decide to play the Terraforming version of this, then Terraforming can search for Close Forest. But in this deck list, this shouldn't be here. This should be just another card that you can use. I'm not entirely sure what you could use, but if you're on the Terraforming version of this, Terraforming can search for Close Forest, and this could be really good against Gravekeepers. 2 MSTs for the stun matchup in case they just have too many back rows I just can't deal with. So this is one of those cards I want to resolve. Maybe in the future this card should be something else, but I'm not entirely sure. Solemn Warning definitely does hurt this deck sometimes because it does negate Nebula Rite, and it also negates the summon of Zex so that you can send Jagen and do your combo. So if I can find a way to like dodge Warning without having a blind space, that would be ideal for me. But this card has other utility as well, other than just negating spells and traps. So, yeah. I side the 1 Mind Control because you can make Utopia really easily. I don't play any tuners in this deck, so you can just make a Utopia or Steelstorm Roach by stealing monsters from your opponent's side and then overlaying with them. Being able to steal a TG Rush Rhino or Tengu is another application of this to be able to make Utopia, so they don't get a search or they don't get to special summon a Tengu. Against Hero Beat, I decided to side deck the Snowmanators because against Hero Beat, being able to wall off the Hero Beat, the Alias, and then being able to kill the Alias in damage step is the key aspect of this card. Also, a flip effect monster that you can flip over with Nebula, but I don't recommend that you flip Nebula to special summon to flip over the Snowmanator because it's just not feasible, especially since it's no longer the damage step. And if you target an Alias with this with Nebula, then they're just going to chain their Gemini Spark. So I need a better game plan against Hero Beat because that's one of my losses in the tournament. It was to Hero Beat because they can resolve Gemini Hero Blast to kill this card after I kill the Alias. So they can still generate +1s by flipping over the Hero Blast, which is kind of unfortunate for me. And then we have the 2 Lances because against the stun matchups, you're going to need damage step tricks so you don't have to rely on Honest to climb over the Alias. So Forbidden Lance allows you to do that. For the extra deck, the extra deck's very variable, but the cards that you definitely need is Utopia. I'm thinking about playing 2 copies of this in the future. The Roach because they're rank 4s, and then you're gonna need the Stardust for the Starlight Road. And then if you guys decide to side deck Cyber Dragons for the Karakuri matchup, or the Gadget matchup, then you can side deck it. But I don't have Cyber Dragon in my side deck, so maybe you can take out the Close Forest, for example, and then play a Cyber Dragon so that you can Contact Fusion a Chimera Tech. Then go for it. If you reborn other monsters that are tuners, then you can play these cards as well to be able to synchro summon into it. Being able to reborn a Striker, for example, and then making it either or monster would also be a good plan for this particular deck. So the matchups I played were Tengu Plant. I actually won against Tengu Plant, but then I lost against Tengu Plant in a different pod. I got to the finals on my first pod, and then after that I played against TG Stun. I was able to beat TG Stun, and then that matchup was a worrisome for me because I only had 1 MST in my main deck. So I was worried that it might not do well, but it actually did well because of the reason why I won was because I was able to resolve Nebula, and then Nebula is just an insane card to be able to win against the stun mirror match essentially. And then in the last round I played against Hero Beat, which was one of my losses. I actually lost 2-0 against that deck, so I'm gonna have to figure out a way for Worms to do better against Hero Beat, especially since Hero Beat is such it's a very grindy deck, and my deck also grinds. But Hero Beat does it better because they can chain Gemini Spark and gain advantage that way. So, yeah, and then having a 1900 monster is really annoying. Since Worms X is an 1800 monster, I often have to find ways to deal with the 1900 monster, paired with a lot of traps. But yeah, that's my deck profile for Worms. Hope you guys enjoyed it. This is my take on Worms. For all of you guys who are Worm advocates or Worm players out there, definitely try out the Worm, the Cat of Ill Omen. Maybe it feels theoretically too slow, but I don't want to leave the drawing of Worms X and Nebula to chance. I want to be able to have more copies of it so that I can just see the combo. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the deck profile. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.